asking me if I would go and run their shift and transform their supply chain into a different type of supply chain than they'd had before in Mondelez. And if you don't know Mondelez does the Cadbury chocolate, Ritz crackers, Oreo, Lou biscuits, all of those kind of things. Lots of local 5-star, all this kind of stuff. They do lots of things that you would probably know of by their local names, not necessarily by Mondelez. And then basically on the 24th of February, I decided to retire about a year and a half ago, and I finally finished on the 24th of February. And it was absolutely the right thing for me to do, because I also have, talk about humanity, I also have cancer. I have stage 4 cancer, and I cannot cure it. But what I can do is live my life to the full, and I can give back as much as I can on the way as I go on my journey, and I can not let it define me. I can actually be defined by who I am, not by a disease that is pretty cruel when you work out what it does. 1 in 2 of us is going to have some impact on a cancer. So that didn't move me. I worked for 2.5 years with cancer, through the toughest times of being diagnosed and having the first treatment. But I didn't let that stop me. I allowed that to be even more me. So one of the things I committed to about 10, 12 years ago was I wanted to leave a legacy, and that was before I knew anything about the disease. I set myself up to think beyond the job, and what did I want to do as a human being? And as a human being, I wanted to I wanted to inspire people. And it took me a long time to say I wanted to inspire people, because I don't know about any of the rest of you, but certainly as a woman, it's really hard to be able to say that kind of thing without feeling like you're being arrogant or you have no right to say it. So it took me years to be able to get to the place where I said, I want to inspire people, and I want to be able to inspire them in a way that allows them to be the best they can be if they choose to be, because it's always people's choice. But can I create the space where people can really be the best if they want to be that? And that doesn't matter if it's work, that can be home, that can be family, that can be friends. That's just, not every interaction, because you can't be perfect, but as many interactions as possible. Can you make them positive for people, that they want to come back, or that you feel that you can add some value? And sometimes you won't, because honestly, there are people who completely annoy me to bits sometimes, who you don't want to be connected with, and that's normal life, and that's who people are. But the majority of people really want to do a good job and want to learn, and they want to be better. And if you can learn from them, because it's always mutual, if you can learn from them and you can give them something as well, then wow, you're in for a really great adventure and ride, and very exciting and fun. And you get to meet so many new people on the way, and so many friends. So I think that was what I set myself. I set myself a goal of, what do I want to, when I go, whenever that is, and I'm not rushing it, then what do you actually want to be remembered for? That kind of thing. Do you want people to remember you positively or negatively, or and some people don't want to be remembered positively, and that's perfectly okay. But if you have that conversation with yourself, if you can get a place where you can have it, wow, that can be amazing for you then becoming the human being who just happens to be a leader. And I think that's the reason for me. It's leadership and humanity. But for me, I don't know how you can separate the two anyway. I think if you want to be a really wonderful leader who shows that you care, you trust, you value people, you want to support people, you have to keep them together, and you have to be able to find a way to just be you. And believe me, I have been called all sorts of things about being weird, strange, but I just say it as I see it, with respect and with care. And when I'm having to be tougher with people, the way I couch it is to say, look, here's all the really brilliant stuff that you're doing, and here's a little bit of tough love, because I care. I care enough about you that I want to explain to you in my teams, this is what you need to do a little bit more of. If you don't agree, that's completely your call, but I'm giving you I'm giving you a gift of feedback, and you can choose what you want to do with it. I think that then means, as you go down the road, you depersonalize stuff. So if someone doesn't follow your advice, you don't take it to heart. You don't make it about you. You actually let it be their choice, because at the end of the day, it's like kids. You can't make them do stuff that you want them to do because they're your children. They have to make their choices. And all you can do is bring them along in a way that enables them to, if they want, make the right choice, whatever that right choice is. So I think you can be a human being who happens to be a leader, and if you can get that dynamic going on in your head, and you can deeper an emotional piece of a tug of war about, well, I've told you something and you should be doing it. That's not human. That's not humanity. That's pretty much bullying. That's pretty much sitting on someone to make them do something that you think they should be doing. Life going around the world, although at times maybe some of the places we were in. I remember in Russia, my husband said to me, and Russia's a wonderful country. The people are just amazing. Not so much now, but certainly when we were there, it was absolutely incredible. I know from the people that I still know there that it's really difficult at the moment, and they don't all line up with what's going on, but that's another story. But when we were there, that was the one place where my husband said to me, look, I need to get out even if you don't, because this is a tough place to work or be when you're, he was teaching English as a foreign language, and because he's very smart like that, communications, but that's the only place where we haven't felt like we could stay for longer. So having that adventure in your mind of moving with a 10-month-old child from Prague, beautiful city, access to all the things you need to have, going to Russia, and we lived in a village in Russia because villages apparently were where people aspired to live. The house was really nice, but it was in a field basically, so there wasn't much around it. But taking our 10-month-old there, and then staying there for 3 years, again, that was an adventure. The only thing in Russia isn't that great. And of course, there's Medivac and all that sort of stuff like that. And then we went from there to Dubai, actually. We lived in Dubai, covered the globe. And then went from there because the three of us got together. And my husband is a huge planner. So we did a strengths, weaknesses, opportunity and threats exercise, which I just don't do, at all. I'm probably with a bit of paper, all three of us. And the two things that came up were lots and lots of positives on both sides of being in Belgium or going, settling in Belgium or going to America. And the two things that came out as negatives in the US were, one, tornadoes, because we were going to Atlanta, and Atlanta has tornadoes, and two, we were all going to get very obese, because that's apparently what everybody in America is, which is, again, complete rubbish, but we didn't know. So we basically said, well, if that's it, I said, well, we're not going to get a tornado, and we're not going to get obese, because we made the decision to go. And it wasn't my decision. It was definitely a family decision, because, again, that's about the human cell. And basically, we got there. And on the first day, I got there first. I went ahead. First day I was there. I told you this was going to happen, So he won. I gave him 1-0 on that one, but we didn't have any obesity issues. So that was fine. So that's really the story. And through all of it, I've learned how to be me. And I think and how to be, if I care for someone, I can tell them. That's not a big deal. It's not favorites. It's not anything. How are you? But not how are you and move on. And lots of leaders do actually something else. No, how are you really? And looking for other signs. I love human connectivity, and then looking for other signs on how you can be, connected as human beings. A thought for you is that I think we spend so much time judging each other. And the reason we judge each other is that so we can feel better about ourselves, because by judging, you make someone smaller. And I do not believe in judging people, because how do we have the right to judge people? Yes, murderers and stuff. Why would I assess somebody who I've never met in my life before and decide I'm better than them and I don't even know? Because we don't have confidence in ourselves to just believe in us. And we won't get it all right, and we will get a lot wrong. But the point is, if we're open and honest and transparent and authentic about it, then we will inspire people to do the same, and you make this change, which I think is what Atal is trying to do with his LEA, leadership levels that enable you to be a human being so you don't get conflicted. And actually, it's hard sometimes. You think, I've had people who've worked for me that I worked closely with who think they have to be horrible as a leader, because that's the kind of style it was for years. Let's just give people a really hard time and tell them their numbers aren't good enough. that doesn't make anybody want to work for you, and that certainly doesn't make anybody feel motivated to do it, and they sit along and then they leave. So if you take the role of leadership as being creating this space for people to be their best and want to stay and be their best and do the same for their people, you start to then have sustainability in your organization, and you start to have those results coming around. Why are we here? What are we going to do? And then how are we going to do it? And what's the bigger deliverable that we want, that we can touch people with in terms of making it sustainable? Talk forever, but you're on mute, Susha. You're on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself because I was laughing loudly at some of the excerpts that you shared. Coming back to when you have anything else, because we have 20 minutes for quick Q&A.
It's important driving force in life.
That's right. So
that's a really deep question for me, actually. If I look at what have I done, then I think it's like tackling cancer and getting my head in the right place and doing all that sort of stuff. And then alongside me, in partnership with my son, that's our local beach. I'll be off at the beach walking for years to come with our dog, and that's the intent, still remains the intent, but the driving force has been these kind of things. But I think the family unit and the other bit that has been so powerful for me is how people have just got behind me and so positive to manage this, particularly in the last 3 years. But even so, before all the cancer shenanigans came along, people were still behind there were people who were passive aggressive, who you would be open and transparent and authentic, and they would go round the back and say, as a woman, you're being way too much aggression, so we're back into that kind of thing. And so there'd be some people that did that, but most people, and certainly people I tended to migrate to, were the people who understood what we were trying to do. So that also has been a driving force in my life, my family definitely, but also the transparency of just saying who I am. These are my values. I have 6 key values, concert together. They're all playing well together. I can be my best. If they aren't, I need to extract myself from that place. And I have left working for CEOs because their values didn't line up with mine. But I've waited. Interestingly, I haven't just gone because I've met people who've done that, but that doesn't work. You need somewhere to go to. I have waited to find the right job to go to ensure I try and find where my values might be met. And I have made mistakes there too. You think you're going to get one thing and you don't. So you have to be on the scan for it all the time and just look at, where do you feel you're in the right place? Is this working for everybody? I mean, I don't want to bore you all silly. So
I think so. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sandra. I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
Please, Preeti. Sure. So you spoke about the behavior some of the leaders traditionally had about, being far too aggressive and some of the negative traits and driving people hard and thinking this is a leadership model, right? You push people and that's how you get work done, right? Have you seen any shift post-COVID, especially because there's been a lot of talk about humanity and humane qualities of a leader, especially in the post-COVID where empathy, resilience, all of these have come to the forefront? My question to you is, what kind of shift have you observed in the last 3 years in leaders? Yeah, good question.
Yes, it is a good question. And actually, I think there's not enough shift yet, even after COVID. We seem to have forgotten that COVID was about looking after each other. And we seem to have forgotten about the space, and we've gone back into, certainly my experience in previous things that I was in, certainly in the last job, was we were really nice to each other for about a year. And then when the world started to turn again, we got nasty. What I have noticed, and we did get nasty, and what I have noticed, though, is the capability of the teams to push back against it, which I think is, so the courage has come out from people because they've learned how to survive through COVID and being locked in and all that sort of stuff. Certainly, I know I've been able to call people on bad behaviour much, much easier because I can see it now because we've lived in it. But I don't think by any stretch it's where it should be. And I had to do an audit recently on diversity and humanity, that kind of stuff. And we don't make it a priority. We still go for the metrics all the time, but we don't seem to understand that the metrics come because we execute things in the right way with our people. If you just tell people to do it and you tell them, I want to talk about the reds and I'm going about all the reds and I don't think we're going to get reds that become even redder, people are scared then to have that conversation with you. Whereas if you just say, okay, let's talk about the reds and let's talk about how we make them green. Do not use amber. Ban amber, because amber tells you nothing. It's just like an excuse to just feel good about something that you shouldn't feel good about, But it's okay to feel bad about numbers as long as you're on the journey to then fix them. But we haven't got to that space yet. We're still back in short term. Let's not yet. We're too scared because most of the people who are at the tops of organisations are not renowned for their EQ. They're not renowned for understanding the dynamics of how people work, and they just want the numbers.
There's lots of questions coming in now, Sandra. I have quite a few, and I've got 7 of my own, which I'll put aside, don't worry. But Priti, thank you very much for your questions. And I have one from Atul. New leaders feel the pressure to fit in and navigate as there are fewer role models like you. What is your advice for them?
Yeah, actually, I told you I was spot on, and I got really upset just before I left, in a good way, but really upset just before I left Mondelez when someone called me up and said, what are we going to do now? There's nobody there to have conversations with. And I said, you are there to have the right conversation. You're having it now with me. So why not have it with the right people at the right level, and you'll start that tidal wave of change. So I think some of it, one, I was going, yeah, you're right. I know there are not enough people have that they also emotionally understand how, and I'm not perfect at it by a long way, so please do not think I am saying that. I'm learning all the time about what I get right and what I get wrong. But at the same time, what you end up being able to do is push into that space and push others gently to try. And I've been doing that more and more, certainly over the last few months as I've transitioned out to retirement. And people even now are calling me up, what should I do? Well, you should talk to them. You should talk in a very, very calm, non-aggressive, depersonalized way about how it makes you feel. And if they choose not to listen, at least you tried. And then you can make a choice about whether you want to be there or whether you want to go somewhere else. And I think at the end of the day, nobody is trapped, and people need to own their decision-making capability because we're all big humans. And it's our choices at the end that we do. Nobody is making us do it. We do it because we don't understand. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry to interject, but I have a question to ask you. I remember in my, I was a senior actor at Gold. In fact, I worked with industry as well, a big company. That my bottom line, I'm using the word bottom line here, everybody will understand that because it takes too much time to have connected time to have that social leadership. So, what do you think you manage what do you do when you get, your leadership telling you that you have no time for this, you have the bottom line to achieve it. This is going to take up too much time, and the budget is up and this and that. What do you do?
So I explained that without doing the bit around how we do it is pointless anyway. We'll get a short-term win with the long. I never talk about 1 year. I talk about probably 3 to 5 years. And then we've got the short-term delivery. What are we committing to? What do we expect to be for the year 3? And what are we going to deliver by year 5? Because if you go short-term, you will only deliver short-term. And if you look at most of corporate America now, it's very short because after the money, it will only last for a short period of time. And we're really getting some traction on this. The bit that's an issue is when people say, to your point, Sushila, where people say, yeah, but we haven't got the money to invest in it. Well, you have to because you've already made a commitment up front to the business that you're going to do it. So, it's these kind of things that you need to work through with the leadership teams that you're in to make it happen. But I don't understand why we can't bring short, medium and long term together and have that view. And then actually it makes it easier for everybody because you can see where you're going to and you can either accelerate or decelerate depending on what's going on in the business environment that you're operating in.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I have a few questions here. Sunayan Mitra has asked if you could do time travel today and go back 10 years, what would you tell, Sandra, from a decade ago? What would you tell the Sandra from a decade ago?
I would. There's 2 things. I would say, 1, keep having the adventures. go out and have some fun, because life's too short for you not to. And so keep doing that, I would say. And then the other thing I would do is spend more time on me earlier on in my career. I was too busy doing things versus actually understanding what made me tick, and what my values were, what I wanted to be when I grew up, and all that sort of stuff. And I still haven't grown up yet. So I wish I had, if I could have done it, although I don't believe in going back and regretting anything, because it's pointless. You can't change anything anyway. But what you can do is learn from it and build it into where you're going. So I'm continuing to learn more and more about myself, around different adventures that I have, different experiences I have. But I would say if I could have started that journey much earlier, that would have been more helpful for me and the teams I lead, and also my family and my friends, because then you can hold yourself accountable for things better. Because if you really, you can't switch a switch on for work and switch it off for home. It has to be really scared, or you're hiding something, in which case I'd say get out of the situation you're in, because that's not healthy for you, but that's what I wish I had done. I would, two things: one, carry on doing what you're doing in terms of having adventures. Even cancer's an adventure, let's be honest, because I've never had it before. I don't know what to do with it, and let's just learn as we go. So I'm meeting some amazing people who care for people who've got cancer, and I'm learning all sorts of technical new things. So that's an amazing adventure if you put it in that box. And sometimes it's put it in that spend more time on me rather than just delivering on the numbers. Yeah.
Thank you. That was great, and thank you for sharing about the experiences that you've had, especially your illness and so on, and we wish you the best. But there is a question from Jonathan Filmer, which is related to what you have gone through, very full of empathy and, about your adversity and so on, and he's sorry to hear about it. And the question is actually, in these moments when things don't quite work out, Sandra, how have you stayed true to yourself and the ideal?
In terms of everything, in terms of me?
Yeah. In terms of your, what you went through with the cancer, as you spoke
about
so quickly.
And I'm still going through it. It's not going to go away. So,
how do you stay true? I mean,
I just stayed the same. I stayed being me. I didn't ask cancer. I didn't do anything bad to get it, because I've run marathons. I have done half marathons. I've been vegetarian, vegan for 30 odd years. I've lived the healthiest lifestyle. I haven't even overly drunk, or maybe once or twice when I was a student, or maybe 4 or 5 times. But that's normal, isn't it? But I haven't done anything that would warrant this, and it's not a history that I have in my family either. So I can sit there and blame the cancer god, or somebody somewhere, but that's not going to help anybody, and it doesn't exist anyway. Or I can just go, okay, so how do I turn this into something that I can talk about it with people? Because I'm damn sure there are other people on this call who've got health issues that they just don't know, they don't want to talk about, which is perfectly okay, or they can't, or whatever, that's completely okay. But if I can talk about it, and I can say how it doesn't stop you being you, it actually makes you more of you, and you can help other people who are in a similar situation, but they just don't know how to do it, then you live your legacy. Yeah, and that's really where I see it. And, other people, you can't give so much energy away. I'm a very energetic, I have a lot of energy to give, and I have to mount now things that actually would be exhausted by the end of the day for it. And you can't now. You have to manage yourself more. And that's harder for me as a person than anybody else. My husband laughs at me because I have no patience. I want to be up and skipping and running around and everything. And sometimes you can't. So I don't think it changes anything, this. I think it just gives a lens to look at in terms of how you can be someone, because it went through a place of how do I manage this, and why me, all that kind of stuff that you would expect. And then you realise there's no logic. So don't ask the question. Just decide how you want to be afterwards. So do you want to be do you want to sit in a ball and just hug yourself and wait for the inevitable? Or do you want to get off and be with your lovely friends and family and, people like this that you can actually talk to and help, hopefully, by answering questions and things. So about all sorts of things, not just cancer. I don't want that to take over the conversation because, as I said, it doesn't define me. So that's how I manage it.
Amazing.
Same way as anything. Yeah.
Thank you. And this is a very interesting question. I think someone from LEH has written this. You have been a successful global leader. And what is the one common leadership quality that transcends all cultures and geographies that you can share with us?
Authenticity, I would say. I think that's the one that I would say for me. If I can't be myself, I'm not anybody. So
what have you seen amongst the people, the one that transcends all the cultures and geographies?
I don't see enough of anything, to be honest. Really? We're not there yet by a long way. But I think I see a lot of fear in people about showing who they are. I don't know if Atul sees that too with as people come onto the programs and getting comfortable with just being able to talk about things. So there's a lot of people don't want change and they're a little bit scared of talking about it. But when somebody does start to talk about it and you pull it out there and you start sharing in in very, very simple language what it is, then it just flies then. So I think there's more fear yet. We are, like I said, we are not in a place yet where we have, which is why it's great Atul's doing what he's doing. We don't have the recognition that to be a leader, you need to be a human. We just don't have that. And I remember this wonderful conversation, Atul, you and I had in Florida when we were at a meeting, and you and I went off for a walk around the building, and we were just like, oh my God, this is so easy. We just need to be ourselves, but nobody will do it. and that was really, you left just after then, actually. But it was to do the right thing. It was to go off and make your difference in getting people to feel comfortable about being us, just being humans, because we have so much capacity and capability, but we just don't believe ourselves sometimes, and we're conditioned over, it's a yes-no culture most of the time, isn't it? Yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that. So you're conditioned to have good and bad. And why?
Right. Why is a good question, actually. Why is a good question there? And you're right. Somewhat interesting observations. But amongst the leaders that you have worked with, or you have mentored, or you've seen, is there one quality that everybody seems to have, or is there no commonality amongst those? That everybody is still groping to find who they are. What do you think? Is there something that transcends all of them, irrespective of their background, for example?
And if you don't succeed first time round, you're a failure. So we've almost been conditioned to think about we fail if we don't win. So it is, and it tends to be not winning together, but winning and losing. And I don't think we've got away from that yet. We've had so many different conversations around the years or over the years around it's a win-win. It's, we even talk about servant leadership. I really don't know what that means anymore now, because it seems to have been abused as a terminology over the years. But we haven't got the vehicle yet that transcend all of that. So I struggle with answering your question, because my answer that jumps into my head is deliver results. That's what you see everywhere, deliver results. And that's good, really, really good. But what it should be, in my mind, is if we're delivering the results, how are we delivering them? And how many people are staying? And how many people are growing? And how many people are helping other people? And blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So when you ask me what's the one characteristic, it's all about the numbers. And I think that's really, really important. I'm a businesswoman as well. What's the point in being in business if you're not delivering the numbers? But I would rather be known for how I deliver the numbers than the numbers, because the numbers will be brilliant. If I deliver it right, the numbers will be brilliant. And they always, lucky for me, they have been up until the last 2 or 3 years. But that's anyway.
What do you do with your life post-retirement, or what you're doing? I think you mentioned that you have started up your own business just now, and I mentioned it as well. But tell us a little bit, so that maybe we can contact you and ask you to mentor us, coaches. I don't know.
I would do that. I would do that anyway. So please don't worry. I'm on the way, but I would do that anywhere. It's not a big deal at all for me. So what am I doing now? Well, I have set up my own consultancy business. I have also said that I will work for one of the top 4 consultancies on my terms, so not full time, but I'll do some of that work. And then I am now a executive director for 3 companies. I just signed up 2 in April, and one I've been in for 3 years anyway. So I'm giving back. And what I love about the board roles is you're not managing the business. You're advising, you're helping when they need help. They come back and they talk to you, questions they've got. So it's a really rewarding process. And so I've got 3 of those. They're called NEDs, so non-executive directorships, which are great. And then the consultancy company, and I'm sure there'll be other. And I'm on 2 advisory boards. Which is one where you don't, NEDs you get paid for, advisory boards you don't. And the advisory boards are something called 0-100, which is sustainability, which I am hugely focused on in terms of how do you get to 0 carbon and 100% digital in order to enable that. So if anybody's interested in look at advisory board. And then the other one I'm on is Boom, which is an exclamation mark, which actually is a women in supply chain group. I'm on the advisory board for that. I went on a panel recently with them to talk about women in supply chain, because there aren't enough of us, and that something happens and we stop. I think there aren't enough of anybody, and there's not enough men in supply chain either, because we run out as we go, and there's not enough diversity anywhere. So that's what I'm doing. I'm remaining on those 2 advisory boards. I'm on 3 other boards, and I'm working for a consultancy from the middle of this year.
You're busier than ever, actually. So,
And I'm trying not to be. Back to my point about energy, I did realise it was getting a bit silly, and I'm not thinking this through.
I know. I have one question for you. I mean, being a woman, and a very successful woman, and you are authentic, and you're compassionate, and you think of others, has that ever been noticed, has it been mentioned to you that it's a womanly trait, not something that men will do or something like that? Have you ever had that? Did they take you, as a leader, did they sort of say, have you ever felt that you have been criticized, for that because you're a woman and therefore you picked up these traits or something like that? Did you have that?
No, the funny thing, at the start of my career, for the first 20 years, it was probably the other way. I was trying too much to be whatever a man is, and I'm sorry for the men on the call. I'm not trying to put you in a box, because I don't know what being a man is. I'm a woman. I don't know. So, but and sometimes that aggression versus assertion stuff. So certainly for the first 20 years of my career, it was all about I was trying to be something I wasn't. Then when I worked it out and the light bulb came on, in the last 10 or so years, softening me to who I am wasn't about being a woman, it was about being Sandra. And I think that was more important for me. And then I realised I hadn't been doing my job of supporting other women and see, well, actually I can get there. Why can't I get there if I do all this, that and the other, and if I think like this? So, I think that I do make a point of saying, yes, women are really important. Yes, diversity is really important. But you can't have everything, and men are equally as important, and we need men and women working together. And I do sometimes get very worried that we end up having these messages and these conversations that say, all right then, so now how do we have more women? Or do we want more women? Is it right to have more women in this space, versus that space? And if you don't focus on the top at the CEO level to make it happen, you never will. And that's where the conversation needs to take place, is actually in the leadership team meetings. And that was the piece of feedback I left I gave as I left, was it needs to start at the top. This needs to be the CEO and the leadership team's call to actually make this happen. Otherwise, we're just playing lip service to diversity. So whatever that diversity is, we need to grow up, stop talking about metrics and not making them if you don't actually change the culture and the model that you work in. You have to grow up and own it, sort of stuff.
Wonderful, actually. And you're right, it's much easier and less stressful to be authentic and to be oneself. But
you're not constrained.
I know,
You're
not
not.
constrained, exactly. See, so I think that's great. But
The
unfortunately,
only thing you should be constrained by is respect for others. I mean, that kindness and respect for others should be a constraint. You should remember that. So just that's the danger of getting comfortable with yourself, is you get too comfortable with yourself and then you're walking all over everybody. So you have to be a little bit comfortable. But that, I think, is the only thing to constrain you with.
Absolutely, you're right. Here, and it's I have to go to bed as well. It's 11:30 here in Brisbane, but that's besides the point. But thank you so much, Sandra, for this wonderful, wonderful talk you've given us.